All rise for the Honorable Judge Simzik.
Court is in session. Please be seated. At this time, the court calls the people of the state of California versus Timothy Richard Heidecker, case number 02-CF025. Will the parties please state their appearances for the record?
Good morning, Your Honor. Vincent Rossetti, representing the people of the state of California. I am the District Attorney for San Bernardino County, and I will be lead counsel. Assisting me is Miriam Wayman, Assistant District Attorney, also from San Bernardino.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Good morning, Your Honor. Mark Dwyer for the defense. With me is Timothy Richard Heidecker.
Hi, Judge.
Welcome.
Thank you, Judge, for doing this.
Mr. Heidecker, please allow Mr. Dwyer to speak for you. That is his job. Good morning, jurors. The court has already called the case of the people versus Timothy Richard Heidecker, case number 02-CF025. Now, in a moment, I'm going to be reading you some opening instructions, but before we do that, we need to swear you in. So this time, I'm going to ask you to all please rise. Thank you. It is the duty of the jury to scrutinize and weigh the testimony of witnesses and evidence as a whole. You will be the sole judges of the credibility of the witnesses. You will be the sole judges of the believability. It will be up to you to determine what weight to give to their testimony. Now, in determining the credibility of each witness, there are several factors I invite you to please take into consideration. First, whether the witness has an interest or lack of interest in the outcome of this trial. Secondly, the witness's conduct, appearance, and demeanor while on the stand. Thirdly, the clarity or lack of clarity in their recollections. Any bias or prejudice, if that has been demonstrated by either side, and possible motives for falsifying testimony. Now, to assist you in evaluating the evidence, I'm going to read you portions of specific jury instructions, which you'll be following. These instructions will be read in full before you are sent out to deliberate. Defendant is charged with counts 1 through 20 of second-degree felony murder under Section 541B of the California Penal Code. Now, to prove the defendant is guilty of second-degree felony murder, the people must prove several facts here. First off, the defendant did an act that caused the death of another person. Secondly, that act was a felony. Thirdly, that the act causing the death and the inherently dangerous felony were part of the same transaction. Now, the defendant may also be guilty of felony murder under another theory. Even if another person did the act that resulted in the death, the defendant may still be guilty. I'm going to refer to that other person as the perpetrator for the purpose of this portion of the jury instructions. The people must prove under this theory that 1, the defendant committed, aided and abetted, or was a member of a conspiracy to commit an inherently dangerous felony. Secondly, the perpetrator committed said inherently dangerous felony. Thirdly, the perpetrator did an act that caused the death of another person. And fourth, the act causing the death and the inherently dangerous felony were part of one continuous transaction. If you are satisfied beyond a reasonable doubt, at the conclusion of the trial, that the defendant directly committed all of these elements of second-degree murder, you must find him guilty. If you are not so satisfied, you must find the defendant not guilty. Members of the jury, at this time we are going to hear the opening statement from the state. Mr. Rossetti, are you prepared?
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor. Counsel for the defense, Mr. Dwyer. Survivors, victims, family, and friends. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, good morning. We're going to be spending some time together over the next few days to answer one simple question. Did Timothy Heidecker Is Timothy Heidecker a killer? I will prove beyond a reasonable doubt, using physical evidence, expert and witness testimony, and Mr. Heidecker's own words, that the answer to that question is yes. Timothy Heidecker is a killer. You know, at first glance, one looks at Mr. Heidecker, and one doesn't see a killer. I certainly don't. I see an upstanding member of our community who's well-dressed, not a bad-looking guy. He's intelligent, educated. You'll see that when he gives his testimony. And he's obviously affluent, actually probably wealthy. I mean, he has to be. He's hired Mr. Dwyer, who is a colleague who has my utmost respect. He's a wonderful criminal defense attorney. And let's be honest, Mr. Heidecker didn't bludgeon someone with a baseball bat. He didn't slash someone with a knife. He didn't shoot someone with a pistol. But what Mr. Heidecker did is more diabolical. He filled the lungs of his innocent victims with a chemical cocktail, which he knew to be toxic, that left the last few moments of their lives them in such agony and pain that we can't even begin to imagine. You know, I wish I could say that that happened to one victim, but I can't. It didn't happen to 10 victims. It didn't happen to 50 victims. It didn't happen to 100 victims. It happened to 157 innocent victims, 20 of which are dead because of the actions of Mr. Heidecker. And the remaining 137 innocent victims, some of which are sitting in the courtroom today, are left with debilitating physical and neurological problems that will plague them for the rest of their lives. It gets worse. I wish Mr. Heidecker's heinous crimes ended there, but they don't. You're going to learn about the Electric Sun Desert Music Festival, an unpermitted, illegal, chaotic event operated by Mr. Heidecker. An event that you will learn was a fraudulent commercial scheme. You hear what I'm saying? Scheme by Mr. Heidecker, which left a wake of unpaid vendors and artists, dozens of lawsuits, and injuries and fatalities on a scale our community has never seen. You will also hear about TCH vape systems, another criminal enterprise owned and operated by Mr. Heidecker. Witnesses will testify that TCH vape systems, through Mr. Heidecker, sold their portable vaporizers at the Electric Sun Desert Music Festival. Expert witnesses will testify that these portable vaporizers contain a dangerous chemical known to Mr. Heidecker to cause illness and be potentially fatal when inhaled. There's more. You will hear about Luther Sanchez. Luther Sanchez was a business associate of Mr. Heidecker. Mr. Heidecker repeatedly, misleadingly, and fraudulently referred to Mr. Sanchez as Dr. San, despite the fact that Dr. San never had a medical degree, medical training, or any medical background whatsoever. You know, you think Dr. San, it's such an endearing term. It's almost someone that I'd bring my children to. See, you know, Dr. San. I trust him with my children's lives. Well, these children trusted Dr. San and Mr. Heidecker when they bought those vaporizers at the Electric Sun Music Festival from them. You will learn that Luther Sanchez entered into a criminal conspiracy with Mr. Heidecker to manufacture those vaporizers, to market them, and to sell them. Now I'm going to tell you about another tragedy. Mr. Sanchez committed suicide. Dr. San was so stricken with grief and remorse over the nature of his criminal acts that resulted in the death of these 20 kids that he committed suicide to also avoid facing criminal charges. Now, I told you a few minutes ago about Mr. Dreyer. Mr. Dreyer will present his case, and he will use every trick in his book to mislead you into believing that it wasn't Mr. Heidecker who was responsible for these heinous crimes, but it was the deceased, Dr. San. We will provide evidence, I believe to your satisfaction, demonstrating that TCH vape systems and those vaporizers, those lethal, deadly vaporizers sold by Mr. Heidecker, were done so by a company he owned solely and operated, and he bears full responsibility for the safety of the products sold by that company. We will also ask witnesses to testify as to the moral character of Mr. Heidecker, or maybe I should say amoral. These witnesses will testify as to the pattern of behavior which demonstrates a cold and callous indifference and recklessness towards the lives of others. The suffering caused by Mr. Heidecker has devastated our community. We seek justice not only for these 20 kids, the electric 20, after they've been churned by the national press and media, but also for the family and friends, other victims and survivors. It will be your job during the course of this proceeding to please listen carefully and be very discriminating in making your decision. And fulfill your duty to see that justice is done and Mr. Heidecker is convicted on all charges. Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Rossetti.
You're welcome.
Mr. Dwyer, are you prepared?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you.
Before we get to your statement, let me remind everyone in the courtroom that decorum and respect are an essential part of criminal justice.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, what we have here is an unimaginable tragedy. numerous lives ruined, a community shattered, 20 kids dead, all as a result of the misdeeds of a madman. He called himself Dr. San. He was not a doctor, far from it. His real name was Luther Sanchez, and I think many in the room would agree that the punishment he received is one that fits the crime: death. Sanchez himself must have agreed in a sense, because he took his own life. Justice was served. We all now are familiar with the electric Desert Sun 20. You see their faces over there on that board. 20 kids, teenagers, young adults, sons, daughters, sisters, brothers. In this case, ladies and gentlemen, there is a 21st victim of Mr. Sanchez, my client, Timothy Heidecker, a man whose only crime was believing in himself and in his young fans and wanting the two parties to get together at this ambitious and benevolent music festival. Unfortunately, Timothy, like a lot of folks who encountered Mr. Sanchez, was hoodwinked. Tim was led astray by this purported doctor, a total fraud, a con man who was an expert at hiding his criminal past, whose major skill in life was not healing the sick, but pretending to be something he was not, and hurting a lot of people in the process. Was it Timothy Richard Heidecker who dreamed up, who cooked up, who served up that toxic, poisonous sludge that these kids smoked? No. The recipe came entirely from the twisted brain of the late Mr. Sanchez. Timothy had no input whatsoever. Timothy was focused solely on his music and on making the Desert Sun Music Festival the best that it could be, in boosting the economy here in the Victor Valley, as well as giving these kids a weekend of high-quality entertainment that this region sorely needs. The kids in this case were good kids. One was a budding veterinarian. One was helping his dad with his roofing business. Another had just completed a Mormon mission in Costa Rica. Yet another was going to nursing school. Good people. But we all make mistakes, even the best of us. In this situation, a Friday night out, these kids made a choice. We will introduce toxicology reports to show that the deceased, in every case, misused these vape pens, inhaling much more than the recommended dosage, and in certain cases, and this is important, in conjunction with other substances which may indeed have been the true cause of death. Ecstasy, marijuana, cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine. Our toxicologists will show that some of these illegal substances were found in amongst the ingredients of Dr. San brand vape juice in the autopsy reports. And so, to blame Timothy Heidecker is to make a 21st victim out of an innocent man. Mr. Heidecker did not force these kids to make the choices that they made. And Mr. Heidecker had nothing at all to do with the recipe or the manufacture of the actual vape juice that may or may not have been the contributing factor to the actual cause of death here. We will produce dozens of character witnesses to testify under oath that Mr. Heidecker, in fact, since the tragic death of his own son, little Tom Cruise Heidecker, has devoted himself 100% to making the world a better place through his music and the poetry of his lyrics. And these witnesses will unanimously prove that every time Timothy attempted to do a good deed, Luther Sanchez was there in the shadows, trying to turn it into something bad, trying to turn a quick buck, manipulating Timothy as he had so many others. Pretending to be a doctor, a force for good, when in fact he was a quack or something worse. Yes, there is a guilty party in this case, and we will show through his own taped testimony, the late-night interrogation of Luther Sanchez, that he acted alone and that he paid the price alone when he hung himself in the Apple Valley jail cell. Justice was served. Now let's honor the memories of the Electric Sun 20 and make sure that Timothy Heidecker does not become victim 21. Let's make sure that this innocent man walks free. The American tradition of justice and human decency deserve nothing less. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dwyer. Are the people prepared to call their first witness?
Yes, we are, Your Honor. The prosecution calls Emily Soroki to the stand.
Excuse me, Judge.
Do you swear under the penalty of perjury to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
You can be seated, Ms. Soroki. Thank you for being here today. Were you present at the event known as the Electric Sun Desert Music Festival on April 14th, 2007?
Yes, I was.
Can you explain why you attended?
I went with some friends. Not a lot of live music comes to the area, so it was just kind of something to do on a Friday night.
Were you there to see any particular artists?
No, I'm not really a fan of EDM, so I'd never heard of any of the acts before.
And can you just explain for them what EDM is?
It's a type of music, kind of electronic.
Thank you. Now, just tell us, what was it that you saw at the festival while you were there?
It was really unorganized and chaotic. I only saw 3 porta potties there, and later I heard that one of those overflowed, so they locked it. And then people started squatting and peeing next to the stage because there weren't any trees or bushes or anything that they could go behind for privacy. The sound.
We have a fly in the room, Judge. Do we want to?
You can proceed, Ms. Soroki. Sorry about the interruption.
The sound was really distorted. I heard people complaining about how loud it was. On the flyer, it said there would be food trucks, but there weren't any. I only saw one table where you could buy bottles of water, but it was like the little half bottles for $10.
Wow. So, did you see anything else besides the overpriced water that was being given away or sold?
Yes, I saw 2 guys handing out vape pens.
And did you see anyone using the vape devices at the festival?
A lot of people were using them, and they smelled really bad.
Now, do you recognize anyone here today that was handing out the so-called vape pens?
Yes, that man right there.
Let the record show that the witness has identified the defendant, Tim Heidecker. Now, there were hundreds of people at the festival. How do you know that the defendant was the person you remember being there?
I would never forget him.
And why is that?
He ran over my friend's foot with a golf cart.
Wow. Can you tell the jury about that?
Mr. Heidecker was driving a golf cart through the crowd, and he ran over my friend Andrew's foot. We yelled at him to stop and that he had hit Andrew's foot, but he just kept going.
So he didn't stop to help your friend?
No.
Was there anyone else with him in the golf cart when this happened?
Yes, there was a man with a beard, and he was not wearing a shirt.
Now, do you recognize the bearded man in this photo?
That's him.
Let the record show that the witness has identified Luther Sanchez. Now, Ms. Soroki, did you see anyone at the festival that appeared to be sick or injured?
Objection, Your
Yes.
Honor. Foundation.
Sustained.
Can you just tell us what you saw at the festival?
During the DKR set, a lot of people started falling over and passing out. Some people went into convulsions. They were just getting really sick, but the band kept playing like they didn't notice, or maybe they didn't even care.
Objection, Your Honor. Calls for speculation.
Overruled.
What happened next after you saw this going on?
I just wanted to go home after that started happening, but it was really hard to find an exit. But people just kept getting sick.
Now, were you eventually able to leave the festival?
Yes, eventually the police came and put the whole place on lockdown, but it was still really hard to leave. The parking lot was a mess because everyone was trying to get out. There were a lot of emergency vehicles and there were some helicopters. It was by far the worst night of my life.
Were you and your friends able to make it home safely that night?
Yes, we were, but it was after 1 a.m.
Thank you for your testimony, Emily. Your witness?
Your Honor, I have no questions for this witness at this time.
You're excused. Thank you, Ms. Soroki. People prepared to call their next witness.
Yes, we are, Your Honor.
Judge, we got a fly. I don't know if there's
Mr.
a
Dwyer?
ruling on that.
Yes, I'll speak to my client, Your Honor.
Thank you. If the bailiff could see to the fly at the break, the court would appreciate it.
The prosecution calls Lisa Benzos to the stand.
Do you swear, under the penalty of perjury, to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. Thank you for being here today, Ms. Bettenkos.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell us a little bit about your background? How long have you been an EMT?
Yes, I started volunteering in college as a first responder, and then I decided to commit my life to it. So I became an EMT and then a paramedic. I've now been a paramedic for over 12 years.
And
We salute your service, just for the record.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And how long have you been with the Apple Valley Paramedics Unit?
The full 12 years.
Now, I want to take you back to April 14th of 2017 of this year. Did you respond to a call dispatching you to the grounds of the Electric Sun Desert Music Festival?
Yes, we were dispatched to the scene of the festival with reports of multiple injuries and incapacitations.
About how long did it take you from the time of the dispatch for you to arrive at the gate of the festival?
Approximately 10 minutes.
How long from that time until you were able to access the grounds and begin to treat injuries?
It took about 20 to 25 minutes.
20 to 25 minutes.
Yes, ma'am.
And that was for you to get from this area over here?
Yes, there were 2 large moving vans parked in front of the entrance, so we were not able to get in.
Okay.
They were illegally parked in a fire lane. And as you can tell, the parking lot was too small for the event, so a lot of the cars were double or triple parked. It was very hard to navigate around.
So then what did you do next?
Well, we decided to get out of the ambulance and enter the festival on foot.
And then were you eventually able to get the vehicles moved?
Yes, we finally were able to find one of the festival volunteers that had the keys that were able to move the vehicles.
Now, is 25 minutes a normal amount of time to gain access to a location?
No, it is not normal.
And could you have saved more lives if you had access to the location and had not been blocked?
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Just tell us what you saw when you did gain access to the location.
When we first got to the scene, there were multiple casualties, at least a dozen at first. There were many people who had fallen to the ground and were scattered about. There were some people who were trying to give them water, but a lot of the injured were vomiting. When we got there, we started our emergency triage operation, but it was so much that we ended up having to call in paramedics from 3 different counties.
Now, were there any medical personnel at the festival when you got there?
No, not to my knowledge. We were referred to Dr. San, but he did not appear to have any medical capabilities, nor did he seem to be coherent.
Now, when you say Dr. San, are you referring to this man in the photo here, Luther Sanchez?
Yes, ma'am.
Please let the record show that the witness has identified Luther Sanchez. Now, was Mr. Sanchez attempting to help the injured?
That's not exactly what I would say. He did give one of the injured some water, but otherwise he was just placing crystals around the bodies.
I'm sorry, crystals? What do you mean?
crystals like you would buy at a gift shop. He was placing them around the bodies of the deceased.
No further questions. Your witness?
Ms. Beddos, I'm Mark Dwyer. I represent the defendant in this action. You stated that it took you about 20 or 25 minutes to get from where the trucks were parked to the center of the event area. Is that correct?
Yes.
So let me just be clear on this then. So you're saying when you arrived to the festival, these two trucks were blocking your entrance?
Yes.
And so what did you do next? You mentioned something about getting some keys. What steps did you take to get past this obstacle?
Well, we decided to leave our ambulance at the front of the entrance and just go ahead and take as much equipment as we could carry.
Okay, but how did you ultimately get in? You said that somebody moved the trucks eventually?
They did eventually, so we were able to move the ambulance more closer to where all the injured were.
So during this 20, 25 minutes of downtime, what did you do?
Objection. The witness is not on trial here.
Sustained.
So did you make any efforts to find any other entrances?
To our knowledge, there was not any other entrance where we could have gotten our truck through.
And do you notice there's a pedestrian entrance just a short distance from the vehicle entrance?
Yes, sir, but we would not have been able to get our truck through that entrance. It was not designed for vehicles of the ambulance size.
So nobody moved the trucks to allow you, because you said earlier you had to have your ambulance to render sufficient aid. Now you're saying you walked in rather than driving in with the truck?
No, we did walk in, but it is more efficient to have our ambulance with us. So as soon as we were able to have the trucks moved, we did have the ambulance move closer to where the injured were located.
Okay, I see. So then if you had gone through the pedestrian entrance by foot, wouldn't that have allowed you to render immediate assistance instead of waiting almost a half hour to do so?
No, sir. Like I was saying, it wouldn't have saved any time to go through the pedestrian entrance because we still would have had to grab all of our equipment. So if I had to speculate, it actually would have taken us 25 to 30 minutes then, sir.
Well, we may have a witness that may contradict that.
Mr. Dwyer?
Were you by yourself that night, or did you have any assistance as far as other paramedic crew?
No, there were 2 paramedics, which is standard on any ambulance.
You plus one?
Yes, sir.
And again, with the 20 to 25 minute delay, did your partner make any efforts to find another gate while you were waiting for 20 or 25 minutes at the main entrance?
No, we were busy getting our equipment ready so we could walk into the festival.
So you made no efforts, isn't that correct?
Sir, we were going into the entrance that we were aware of.
Exactly. Thank you, Your Honor.
Witness is excused.
Lives could say had they had their shit together.
No, you just made it seem like they made it seem like she was.
We have a plan.
You prepared to call your next witness?
The prosecution calls Jared Jolson to the stand, Your Honor.
Start doing your job because you've been doing
I think I went to law school.
I understand.
You know, they're gonna
I'm
try
paying
this
you money. You should make the effort to do this. Put the
Pound him. Let's get this done.
I understand. This is bullshit.
I gotta do my job. Come on.
Jared, if you'd have a seat over here.
Do you swear under the penalty of perjury to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you for being with us, Jared. Now, were you present at the Electric Sun Desert Music Festival?
Yes, I was.
And what time did you arrive at the festival?
Me and my 2 buddies, Tyler and Brett, we arrived in the parking lot around 6 p.m.
And why did you attend the festival?
Well, we went to see Marcus Westfield play his set.
Can you describe the conditions at the festival when you arrived?
Yeah, so first thing we noticed is there wasn't really any staff. We had our VIP tickets, which we had pre-ordered, but we weren't asked for them. We kind of just walked right in, and we saw some other people just entering through some holes in the gate. So it really, above all else, was just disappointing.
And how was it disappointing?
Well, the VIP tickets, which we had ordered, they were supposed to come with front viewing.
Objection, Your Honor, relevance?
We're trying to establish, Your Honor, the experience at the festival because the defendant has said that it was one of the top music festivals, but there were a number of things that were not available.
I'll allow the questioning, but let's make sure we wrap it up.
Okay. Go ahead, Jerry.
Well, the VIP tickets, they were supposed to come with free food and drinks in a special VIP area with bathrooms. And also, we were supposed to receive a T-shirt and a laminate from the festival. And we did not receive any of those things, even the bathrooms. There was no bathrooms.
Now, was there any food or water available to you?
Well, the water was being sold. It wasn't free, which wouldn't have been so bad if it wasn't so hot, but it was like 110 that day. And there was one table with some Austin peanut butter crackers laid out, but it was open to everyone, so.
So the only food you saw was water and peanut butter crackers?
That is correct.
Now, did you see the defendant at the festival?
Yes, I did.
Did you have any interaction with the defendant?
He was the one who gave me the vape pen.
And can you tell us about that interaction?
Well, he was handing them out there was one other guy, kind of quiet guy with a beard.
And do you recognize that gentleman in the photo as being the gentleman you saw?
Yes, I believe that's him.
Okay, let the record show that the witness identified Luther Sanchez. Now, when he gave you this vape pen, was it free?
Yes, the initial vape pen was free, and it came with a little bit of vape juice inside of it. But then each refill cartridge was $40.
Now, did you receive any training or information about how to use the vape pen?
No, ma'am. I did just receive a flyer with the vape pen.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes, you may.
Jerry, can you tell us, is this the flyer that you saw?
Yes, that is.
Let the record show that the witness has identified item number 203 as the flyer.
So what? I mean, you should object. It doesn't matter.
Now, did you use the vape pen that you were given?
Yes, it was free, so I took one, and I only got like one puff of it before it started leaking on me, and it got all over my joggers and kind of ruined my pants. And when I was trying to fix it to see what was wrong with it, it kind of just broke apart, and there were no trash cans at the festival, so I put the pieces on the ground and covered them with dirt.
Now, you said you did use the vape pen. Can you describe the experience of taking in the vape?
Yeah, it was not pleasant. From just the one puff that I took, what I experienced was like burning in my lungs. I felt the juice go all the way down through my throat, and I started getting very sweaty after that. I started having trouble breathing and maintaining my ability to move properly.
Now, were you worried about your health at this point?
I was getting concerned about my health.
Did you try to get another vape pen or get a replacement?
No, ma'am. I was pretty dissatisfied with the first one, so.
Did you see anyone else who appeared to be sick at the festival?
Objection, foundation.
Sustained.
Can you describe what you saw at the festival regarding other participants?
I remember it was during DKR's set, I believe. I was right at the front of the stage, and the first thing I can remember is just screaming behind me, just loud screaming. So I turned around, and what I saw was someone who was falling down and twitching, and then I saw someone else try to run up and help them, but she was just falling over and having muscle spasms. And I saw this happening to multiple people. Some of them were foaming out of the mouth, and they had rashes all over their body. I tried to make a phone call to 911, but there was no connection. I just remember the sound of the music playing, DKR singing empty bottle, empty bottle, empty bottle, over and over again. And I'll never forget that sound. I thought they would see this and stop the festival, but they just kept playing, and they just continued with the rest of their set. At that point, some people were beyond help.
Thank you for your testimony, Jared.
Thank you.
Your witness?
Hey, I got this, don't worry. We're fine. I'm off.
Mr. Jolson, my name is Mark Dwyer. I represent Timothy Heidecker. Mr. Jolson, how old are you?
19.
Are you a regular concert goer?
Well, my friends had gotten me going to EDM festivals, and I had been to a few before this.
In the last year, how many EDM concerts have you been to?
This was my third one.
Was this event on April 14, 2017, was that the first Apple Valley outdoor concert you've been to?
Yes, sir.
You know the band, the headlining band that was
DKR.
performing DKR? Do you know Mr. Heidecker is a member of that band?
Yes, I do.
So I have a question then. You had said that Mr. Heidecker was giving out the vape pens along with the bearded gentleman, Mr. Sanchez.
That's correct.
Would it surprise you to know that we have witnesses that will say that Mr. Heidecker was actually performing with his band at the time you said you were receiving a vape pen from him?
Well, DKR had many sets throughout the festival, so I wouldn't be surprised that they were performing a lot that day.
So is it possible that you got the vape pen from Luther Sanchez and not from my client, Timothy Heidecker?
I believe he was the one who gave it to me.
But you're not sure. You said you went with two friends, Tyler and Brett.
That is correct.
How old are they?
They're also 19.
And what did you do before the festival?
Well, prior to the festival, I had picked up my friends from their houses, and in the parking lot, we did hotbox in my car prior to entering.
Can you tell the jury what you mean by doing a hot box?
That's where you smoke a lot of weed, and the car is full of the fumes.
This is,
Okay.
we need, do we
Your
need to go
Honor,
further?
could you direct the witness not to?
I'm asking if we need to, I'm sorry.
Mr.
but-
Heidecker, please allow your counsel to speak for you. That's what he's being paid for.
Well, you're not doing your job.
Mr.
you're not-
Heidecker,
Okay. I can't talk to my attorney?
not while he is
We'll
examining.
talk on a break, all right? We'll talk on a break.
You need a recess, Mr. Dwyer?
I just want for the record to know that he's
Do you need
not, he should be calling for a mistrial because at this point, he's admitted
Mr.
that he's.
Heidecker,
Okay, all right.
Mr. Heidecker.
Just relax. I've got this.
You,
All right, we left off with you where you said you were doing a hot box with your companions in the parking lot at the venue, is that correct?
That is correct.
And in addition to smoking marijuana with your friends, were you doing any other drugs or using alcohol?
I did have a very small bottle of tequila
well,
with me.
Your Honor, okay. Good luck.
Okay, let's get back to your drinking and smoking weed. So you were smoking pot in the car, you were doing a hot box, as you described it, which is when the car is filled with the marijuana smoke, and it's like being inside of a bong. Would that be a fair depiction?
Your Honor, defense is testifying again.
Once again, Mr. Dwyer, questions, not statements.
And also, why isn't he bringing up, I'm sorry,
Mr. Heidecker, would you like us to add a contempt charge to what you're on trial here for today?
Nice.
Because I will do it.
yes, sir. I apologize.
You describe being in the car with a marijuana hot box. Is that similar to being, say, like with a bong, the effects of being inside of a bong?
I would say it's exactly like being inside of a bong.
And were you also drinking in addition to doing the hot box effect? Were you drinking in the car?
Your objection, Your Honor, this line of questioning, it's unnecessary. He's established that the witness was drinking and smoking marijuana. That's been established.
Questioning does go to the credibility of the witness. I'm going to allow it just a little bit longer, Mr. Dwyer.
Thank you, Your Honor. So aside from the hot box in the car and the drinking later in the festival, did you do any other drugs?
No, sir. Those were all the substances.
So after the hot box, when you entered the festival, would it be fair to say you and your friends were quite stoned?
We were not totally stoned at that point, but we had had a few hits.
You were stoned.
Yes, that's correct.
And then you compounded that by drinking the tequila, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. So when you said that you looked around and didn't see security, isn't it fair to say that your senses were impaired the moment you stepped on those grounds?
I would say that with my experience with marijuana, I was able to remember things accurately.
You said you took one puff of the vape pen, is that correct?
That is correct.
Did you have any kind of intoxicating effect or not from the vape pen?
No. What I got from the vape pen was mostly physical ailments.
How do we know that the ailments you described earlier are not from your drinking and smoking?
Objection, Your
Marijuana in the
Honor, it's
car.
calling for speculation.
Sustained.
All right. You did say you were stoned when you entered the fairground, the festival grounds, isn't that correct?
That is correct.
Did you have any adverse reactions from drinking the tequila? Did you feel nauseated?
I did not feel nauseated. In fact, it was the only thing that made the festival more fun.
That's unbelievable. I mean, sorry.
Did you see Mr. Sanchez at the festival at any place other than at the booth?
No, he was at the booth throughout the whole day.
All right. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Thank you.
What?
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
Witness is excused. Thank you.
Fucking ground.
Mr. Heidecker, you are that close.
Approach
You
the
are
bench.
that close.
Approach the bench.
Relax, relax.
No, you may not approach the bench.
All right, I think we need a brief recess.
Yes.
I certainly agree. We are in recess.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Ridiculous.
What's the matter with you? What did I fucking tell you?
Believe this?
Unbelievable.